I was asked to help facilitate 2 updates today. And to that end, have Jessica and Josh Mays here to provide comments on the past COSN visit and campus safety investments. Before I introduce them, however, I want to acknowledge that today marks the last Senate meeting of 2022. There's a lot to do, and we still have a lot of issues we need to address together. But at the same time, it's important for us to acknowledge what we've achieved and what we have to celebrate. This year, 2022, marks a record-breaking year for philanthropy and research grants, and by a wide margin. This past year, our faculty received a record-breaking $164.5 million in research contracts and grants. That represented a substantial 17% increase over the previous year and is the highest increase in the university's 125-year history, while we're increasing the diversity of the faculty. From fall 2019 to fall 2022, we went from 79 Hispanic tenure-track faculty to 102, which is a 29% increase. We went from 28 African-American tenure-track faculty to 40, an increase of 42%. I cannot overstate how meaningful our progress is to our students. We opened up our first U.S. University Center in Oaxaca to support our 30+ faculty who do work in the single most indigenous state in Mexico. And in partnership with the county, we launched the first academic health department in the state of California, the Live Well Center for Innovation and Leadership. We're also the primary drivers behind California's passage of SB 684, which gave SDSU the authority to offer independent doctoral degrees in public health, which will be launching this fall. We also pushed for our vision for a transformed Imperial Valley. SDSU has been the only 4-year university in the region for more than 60 years and has served as a local resource for generations of families. Our SDSU Imperial Valley students graduate at incredibly high rates, more than 85%, and yet it had been decades since we'd invested in that community. Imperial County remained the county with the highest unemployment rate in California at 15%, more than twice the state's average. We brought $80 million to change that. Our new 4-year nursing program, a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, BSN, was also added this year. The National Institutes of Health awarded $15 million to SDSU earlier this year to bolster our faculty ranks, and we received record philanthropic support to create yet more endowed professorships and chairships. We surpassed our GI 2025 4-year graduation rate goals several years ahead of schedule and have already passed our transfer 2-year goal. We are on track to reach our 4-year transfer graduation goal of 91%, the highest in the system. We created more than 4,000 new jobs in SDSU Mission Valley through the one-time completion of Snapdragon and now the River Park. And we are in the active phase of building out our first phase of residential housing. I cannot overstate the importance of housing to not only the residential and innovation ecosystem we're seeking to create, but to our future faculty, staff, and students. Our community is driving improvements and innovations in nursing, public health, engineering, business management, teacher training, indigenous language retention, environmental sustainability, and other efforts addressing equity and social justice issues. All this is a mere snapshot of how our community has helped to build a better future this year. Our intellectual curiosity, our teaching, our partnerships, everything we do builds upon a university's 125 years and maps out a promising future for our institution and for the generation of students to come. To our students, faculty, staff, mil gracias, thank you. Thank you for contributing so much of your time and skill in support of the betterment of research and the success of our students. You're helping to expand our community impact and our plans for the SDSU sustainability and longevity, and your careful everyday efforts support the overall safety and well-being of our SDSU community. I wish you all happy holidays, no matter how or where you might celebrate. I now want to introduce Jessica Rento to provide an update on last month's COSN visit as requested. Jessica?
Great, thank you. And thank you all for having me. As you all hopefully are aware, the Chancellor's Office has engaged a law firm named Cozen O'Connor and their institutional response group to conduct a system-wide assessment of the CSU's implementation of its Title IX and discrimination, harassment, and retaliation programs. Cozen O'Connor is conducting an assessment at each of the 23 campuses And the goal of the assessment is to strengthen CSU's culture by assessing current practices and providing insights, recommendations, and resources to advance the CSU's Title IX and civil rights training, awareness, prevention, intervention, compliance, and support systems. So it's a pretty broad assessment. COSN's institutional response group came to campus November 1st through November 3rd to meet with certain stakeholders and implementers whose work intersects with Title IX and our DHR efforts. During their visit, they met with a number of these stakeholders from across our divisions, as well as with students and faculty. In addition to the on-campus meetings, COSN is finalizing a survey that will go out to all faculty, staff, and students. We were all mindful of the fact that in 3 days, they were only able to meet with a limited number of people. So we still wanted to provide some mechanism for our campus community to provide input to the COSN group as part of that assessment. They're hoping to send out the survey beginning in mid-December. They are mindful of the bad timing of that, given that that's during exams at the end of the semester. However, the survey will remain open through the beginning of the spring semester to provide a long period of time for individuals to participate in that survey. Now, COSN is in its final stages of their on-campus visits to all of the 23 campuses, and they're working with the Chancellor's office to finalize their timeline for the completion of their assessment and the reporting on that assessment. We don't have specific information on the timeline just yet, but we expect the findings will be reported by the end of the spring semester. And once we have more specific information about that timeline, we will share them with campus. In the meantime, we're still working to identify our own opportunities for ways to improve our Title IX and DHR services. And one of the things that we're currently working on and our Sexual Violence Task Force is currently discussing is how to raise awareness relating to the Title IX resources and support options available to our campus community. So our Sexual Violence Task Force is currently discussing a new awareness campaign that can be launched in the spring semester, and really to raise that awareness, to make sure that people know the different options they have for assistance and support. And then in addition to that, we are in the middle of the recruitment process for an additional victim advocate position on campus. That victim advocate position will be a university position that will be working in tandem with our existing campus victim advocate, who is provided through a partnership with Center for Community Solutions, which is the local rape crisis center. And so by having two victim advocates, who are confidential resources, it will strengthen the support options available to our campus community when it comes to Title IX issues. So at this point, like I said, we don't have all of the information about the COSN assessment, but we will make sure to communicate as more information becomes available. Any questions?
Okay, I have one hand up. Senator Camper, you're recognized.
Sorry. Thank you, AV Parenta. I appreciate it. I have a question about, I think this is at least the second time you've come and told us about this. Maybe I'm also confusing with hearing about SCC, and you've used the term stakeholders and you've given us a little bit of detail what that is, but could you be more specific? And is there going to be more transparency so we know who actually got to talk to them? I mean, I don't know if the names are confidential, but if there's any sense we can get about like what you mean by a stakeholder, what the cross section is, was it faculty? I've heard from other folks on campus that they were disappointed that they believe they are a stakeholder and they were not asked to participate at all. So if you could give us some more detail about the process to choose who spoke, who got to speak to them, and if there's going to be transparency about, the more detail who that was.
Yeah, it's definitely not confidential who spoke with the Cozen group. The Cozen group provided a draft agenda of who they wanted to speak with. It was mainly focused on the individuals who are working directly on the provision of Title IX related support and resources and the practice. We identified that missing from their suggested list were students as well as faculty. So with respect to faculty, I worked with Chair Butler-Bird on identifying individuals who could come to a meeting with Cozen, as well as I worked with AS and Student Affairs to identify students who are working in the area of sexual violence awareness and prevention. Again, we recognize that there are individuals across our campus community who have interest in these areas and have input that they want to provide. And so the survey was something that was discussed with them as far as an opportunity to allow for a broader participation in that on-campus meeting. And so like I said, it's not a secret. I'm happy to provide the list to NOLA for distribution.
Thank you. Senator Sherman, you have a
Thank
question?
you.
Thank you, Chair Butler-Bird. I have a little bit of feedback from a student athlete that I'd like to share, and then one specific question. And before delving into that, I just want to thank you, AVP Rento, because I am sure that there's been an immense amount of work that's gone into your efforts, and they really sincerely are appreciated. I spoke with a student athlete last week, unprompted, and I just wanted to share what my student athlete told me. Two things. They said that after the alleged gang rape incident, pretty much everyone knew in terms of the students who the alleged rapists were. She relayed a story to me in which one of the alleged rapists showed up to this person's house and was told to get the F out because they knew who that person was. And the other thing was that also in discussion or training, some sort of setting in which players were being talked to about sexual violence, discrimination, harassment, prevention, in response to seeming disinterest among some male athletes, and I won't say from what sport, the male athletes' response was, we just don't really care that much about this stuff. So I wanted to pass that feedback on that I found really concerning. And my question is, you mentioned that the Connor O'Cozen survey would be open in December, which is not good timing, but it will remain open into the spring semester when our students, our faculty are actually back on campus. And I was just wondering if you would be able to provide a specific date on when that survey will be open until. I myself have feedback for Connor O'Cozen as well. Thank you.
So when I reached out to Cozen O'Connor to find out the timeline, they didn't give me a specific date. Personally, I think that it should run at least several weeks into the spring semester, and we'll definitely work to promote it to ensure that our faculty, staff, and students are aware of the survey and the opportunity to participate in the survey. I've also pushed Cozen O'Connor to ask a question about whether the individual completing the survey would be interested in participating in a focus group, and pushing them to potentially hold some focus groups based on the participation in the survey. They have indicated that they like that idea. I will follow up with them to see if they're going to be doing that. Last I talked with them, they were planning on doing it, but I know that plans sometimes do change, and so I want to make sure that they understand that we're still pushing for it in case it's falling off their radar. And thank you for the feedback on the from the student athlete. You know, one of the challenges that we've had is getting individuals to talk with our Title IX team. And we see this a lot in small communities, whether it's the student athlete community, or sometimes we see it in Greek life, or even in just certain social circles. People don't necessarily want to be the one reporting someone in that social circle. And that's a challenge that we always have. And the folks across campus who work together on these issues are mindful of that, and trying to educate our students as to the importance of speaking up about these issues. And with respect to the training, it's disappointing to hear that someone would say that in a training. It's not necessary. It's not completely surprising to me. We do have individuals, whether they're a student athlete, you know, or a member of a fraternity or a sorority, or a grad student, or any student who will say things like that. And I will say that when we hear those types of comments, we do lean into those discussions. It may not happen publicly, but typically there will be a touch point with that individual or individuals to talk with them about their perspective on that, and why it should be important to them, and why we all have a shared obligation in these types of issues. So, but I do appreciate you being there for your student, and you sharing that with us.
Thank you for the thorough response, AVP Rento. I appreciate it.